Phil's motto is plan less for more adventure. Now maybe that's not the wisest motto when travelling through Australia's top end, but it does make for one hell of a story.
My name's Phil and I've been riding for 20 years. A buddy and I shot overseas, and I think my first interaction with the motorcycles was the scooters over there, the little mopeds. And we had the best time, couldn't wipe the smiles off our faces. And then when we came home, it was time to start looking, got the bug. Once I came back from that Bali trip, went on the hunt. I picked up a wrecked CBR 250 and painted it up to look like the bigger R1s at the time. So they were gloss black up top and sort of matte black down the bottom. My favorite thing to do would be hit the drag strip, and it was insane, absolutely mind-blowing speed. So I wanted to go fast, but sort of keep it safe as well. So we did a bunch of drag racing, race tracks, and back in 2013, we started a crew, just a bit of a local sort of thing called the Speed Cruise South Coast, where we built bike trailers and we would try and round up as many people as we can to hit Eastern Creek Dragway. I think it was every Thursday night was bike night. So yeah, that's where the speed bug sort of hit. And you meet a lot of people, you learn a lot. And I think in a lot of sport, there's egos and there's people telling you what you should and shouldn't do. But the bike, the crowd that we met and the people and personalities, they wanted to see you improve. They wanted to see you get better. They wanted to see you get your best time. So often you'd come back from a run and just this old like Yoda motherfucker would just be like, oh, instead of doing that, doing this. And I'm like, oh my God. And then your times would just shave. So you're always looking to better your previous time. And it was through meeting people at the bike night where you could achieve that. I was working locally, and then my housemate at the time was a rigger. And I was working at just like a repair shop locally and broke as anything. Came home and his pay slip was on the table one day. And I was like, I'm going to be a rigger. So with the rosters I was on, it was 4-in-1 roster. So I'd be away for 4 weeks working and come home for 1 week. I was keen to explore. I want to be able to get to places I generally couldn't. So that's where the hunt for a adventure bike kicked off. And at the time I was working with a guy, and he's the Jesus of the adventure world. As soon as he starts talking, you cannot look away. The stories, he traveled the world on a BMW GS. So of course I heard all these stories about GS, and then I ended up looking for a BMW F800GS. So with them, you've got the bigger 21-inch front wheel, and they're a lot more sort of nimble off-road. So as a single rider, they were perfect. So when I picked that bike up, I was working just outside of Gladstone, off the coast. So I shipped that bike straight to Gladstone, where it lived for maybe a few years, and then every chance I would get, I'll do the whole east coast of sort of Queensland, and then inland. So a lot of great mountain roads, a lot of waterfalls, a lot of untouched areas that general public couldn't get to in their two-wheel drive sort of car or road bike. So the BMW GS at the time was the perfect bike to kick off that sort of adventure bug. It is one of the most beautiful pieces of Australia that I've ever seen. National parks throughout the whole Northern Territory, which are just insane, and the waterfalls are just massive. They're the purest of water. The swimming holes are just magnificent, and the best thing about it is there was no one there. Like, there's times where you'd go ride and you'd hit a big water hole, and you're the only person there, and there's two massive waterfalls dumping into it, and it's unreal. The bike, I kitted it out. So I had soft saddlebags, which were great. So on one side I had all tools for repairing the bike, and then the other side I had pretty much all my food and camping gear. I'd finish work on a Saturday, so you got to nail it to where you think there's a camp spot. Often I wouldn't find one, and you'd find yourself just camping next to a bloody ant mound or a termite, whatever. You wake up in the morning, you're like, oh my God, I could have died. So yeah, a lot of camping. And that was another thing, is I wasn't doing a lot of camping previous to that. So the adventure bike opened up so many different opportunities to learn new things like off-roading. Got to the point where I was dehydrating a lot of my own food and then doing sort of bigger trips off the grid. So it was a big learning curve, and yeah, absolutely loved it. At the time, I had my bike left in Darwin, so I had to get it back somehow. And I'm thinking, man, the bike's decked. It is fully kitted for the long haul. And I'd never done anything more than maybe a few days on the road. That trip took a month, and it was the most insane month of my life. So I jumped on the bike, and that was around the wet season, which I do not recommend, but options were limited. I had to bring the bike back. So the waterfalls were beautiful, but also the running streams were chockers. I bumped into people, they said rivers hadn't ran here in 5 years, and I had to ride through them. The Northern Territory is amazing. It is not only the people that you meet. There was an episode where my rear brakes locked on and I didn't have the exact tooling for it. I was 300 kilometers out of Darwin at a place called Katherine, super remote. And almost instantly, car after car was pulling in to see if I was okay. So one guy was running moonshine to the to residents or something. Another guys were traveling, and then this couple rocked up, full dressed in white. I was like, this is weird. These goes, oh, do you need anything? I said, man, I need an 11mm spanner. Do you happen to have one? He goes, you're kidding. He goes, I'd use one on my lawnmower. So that's the only size I've got in my car. I said, thank you so much. And he said something that stuck with me until today, and it's, how can I expect people to stop for me if I don't stop for them? So if I ever see anyone broken down, I'm there. I loved paper maps. And there was this road and that kind of linked to the top of Queensland. I was like, that looks doable. You don't know what the conditions are obviously like on a paper map. So I hit that, and that's where the trip became an adventure. It was off-road the whole way. I carried enough food and water with me and petrol to kind of last 3-4 days remote. But the rivers that I had to cross, there wasn't even tyre marks from four-wheel drives or cars. So no one had ran these roads for potentially weeks because they're just cut off. I hit some of these roads and they were that flogged out and muddy. I would be in maybe second gear top, the whole hundreds of kilometers, just weaving dirt, mud getting flown everywhere. And I was like, this is what I signed up for. You never knew what was gonna happen. It was maybe a few days, I hadn't seen anyone. Fuel was running out, food was running out, and my body was wrecked. Because when you're riding that much off-road, the strength you need and stamina to hold that big heavy bike up in mud, I come across this house and I just collapsed on the front balcony. A lady woke me up and she said, there's a river out the back, go wash. By the time you come back, we'll have food ready for you. And in a way, I don't know if they saved me, but I was there for 3 days, just building me strength, and they were feeding me, and it was things like that which you remember. And mind you, top end of Queensland and Darwin, there's crocs everywhere. So the air intake on the GS was sort of up around the top of the fairing, and water was coming close to that. So the current was sort of pushing me across, got to the other side, just powering it, and all of my boots are filled up with water. I ended up getting to the next pub to dry off and drain the boots, and I heard some guy go, he's here. I was like, what does that mean? So what happens is people from towns call up to warn each other that, oh, we've had rain, your rivers are gonna flood. Oh, by the way, there's a lunatic on a bike, you might see him. So I come into this pub and everyone's just gone, and then Up in Queensland, they also call you bull. That was different to me. So it's just those sort of interactions which just make it all worthwhile. So never did a big trip. Obviously not a motorcycle mechanic. Knew nothing about riding off-road. Full send, 1 month. It was the best. And that comes down to this guy that I worked with. He's like, you can do it. And I was like, fuck yeah, I can do it. And something he said to me is plan less for more adventure. So I did not plan a route. Had no digital GPS to sort of get me here or there, no support car. Full send. Next sort of step was look into the cruiser world. So this was the first Harley I ever bought, and it's a 2005 Sportster 1200. So once I picked up this and I started pulling it apart and modifying it, you kind of meet other people in the scene and you're like, fuck, I just live down the road, I live here. And then the scene was just something I fell in love with. Two I have now is my little Sportster, and also I have a 2005 Softail. So that is the last of the carbies before they went injected. That's more for long distance, but it also gets ripped around locally as well. It's a fun bike. It's been over 6 foot with bigger bars. I've stretched the forward controls out, and it's just a comfy bike for me, but for the long rides, definitely on the Softail. A few years ago during COVID, I was out of work. So a lot of time was spent with my hobby, which was leathercraft at the time. So then I started manufacturing more motorcycle specific products. So tool rolls, even key fobs for your keys and leather belts. And I was getting a lot of interest from people I didn't know through socials, saying, oh, can you make me this? Can you make me that? So then Filthy Leather Co was born. So now we are 3 years in, and we design and manufacture tool rolls, gloves, jackets, leather vests, and a whole lot of apparel as well. So in the beginning, I would take my goods to makers markets and showcase what I have, and I'm still going to these events. And it's rewarding to see people that you sold things to 3 years ago come back and say, oh, I've still got this, or I've still got that, or even gloves. They look at your sign and be like, hang on, I bought your stuff from Harley Davidson, and now you're doing like this little bike event. I was like, man, this is where it began. And it's something that you kind of never lose sight of where you began. Motorcycling is, it's fucking cool. It opens so many doors as well. It doesn't matter if you want to commute, if you want a creative outlet, if you want to just ride to, if you need whatever it is. There's a motorcycle out there. And even through my 20 years of riding, my bikes have changed to suit where I'm at in life. There's always something that'll cater for me with the next chapter. So, rock on.
Filthy Phil and myself will both be at Breakfast Talk at Heathcote Oval this coming Sunday, the 29th of October, from 8 a.m. till 11 a.m. So if you're in Sydney, drop by and say hi. There'll be motorcycle safety demos, vendors, and of course great coffee, and the barbecue will be cranking. If you'd like to see some more adventure rider stories, then check out this playlist. There's a video with Jeff, who travelled on pretty much every continent on his BMW R1300GS, and another with Perry, who is the founder of the Scrap Heap Adventure Ride. Enjoy.